Hello friends, welcome to our new lecture series. That's our Iso-Quant curve or ISO product curve. Students, myself Dr. Awadhesh Kumar Dubey. In this lecture, we are just discussing about the Iso-Quant curve or ISO product curve. Students, as earlier lecture, we have to define about the production and production functions and different kinds of the production functions. But the study of the production function is not to be completed instead of the study of Iso-Quant curve, because all over the discussion, all over the study of the production function, must we have to focus on the Iso-Quant curve or ISO productivity curve. In economic study, there are two pillars. First, the productions, and second is the consumptions. Consumption is the power of demand. It means when we are discussing about the consumption, we just discussing about the consumer, and the power of the consumer is consumptions. In the same way, students, when we are discussing about the production, so on that condition, the production is the power of producer, and it is just called as a supply. So in this lecture, students, for studying the productions, we have to focus on the production processes, and during the analysis of the production processes, we have to think that there are two resources are there. There are two factors of the productions are there. Although we know that there are 5 factors of the production, but as per the discussion of the diagrammatical point of view, we must be considered that only 2 factors of the production are be taken here. That is the capital and the labor. So now the students, to start our lecture, that is depends on the Iso-Quant curve, or we can say it's the ISO product curve. Students, ISO means equi, Quant means quantity, curve, as you know, curve means analysis of graphical presentations, or we can say the declaration of the 2 factors in a graphical manner. It is also be called as the ISO product curve. ISO product means, ISO means same, and product means productions. It is explaining the concept where our entrepreneur have to get the productivity, the equi-productivity on the various combination of the factor. Which kind of the factor? That is the capital, and that is the labor. So I think it can be defined as in this word that Iso-Quant curve shows those various combinations where an entrepreneur have to get the equi-productions while the using of various combination of the capital and labor. It means it is just similar as a indifference curve where a consumer have to consume 2 commodities, and the combination of the various options of these 2 commodities, the consumer are be able to get the equi satisfaction. In the same while, when we are discussing about it in a productions manner, where Iso-Quant curve or ISO product curve have to say that the various combination of a producer while using the different combinations of the capital and labor. So this is a simple way of Iso-Quant curve, or we can say ISO product curve. Now see the details of ISO product curve, as all the things will be discussed on the introductions. Now see on the screen, students, the ISO product curve is like the indifference curve of the consumptions. Just as the indifference curve shows the same level of the satisfaction of a consumer received from the different combination of the 2 goods. Similarly, the ISO product curve shows the same level of the income or productions received from different combination of the 2 factors of the production. And different combination of 2 factors means the combination of the capital and the combination of the labor. What the ratio of the capital, what the various combination of the capital and labor, but while the change in the combination, while the change in the ratio of the capital and labor, the entrepreneur have to get the equi-productions. That is why the ISO product curve curve is also called the production indifference curve. An output curve or isoproduct curve is the point path of, or we can say the expansion path of different combinations of the two resources. Students, resources are labor and capital that produce equal amount of the output. Since all the combinations give equal output, hence the producers becomes neutral towards these combinations. Hence, this curve is also called the indifference iso production curve, or we can say the production equalization curve, production neutrality curve, as we say, students. Now, student, the next is here the definition of the iso product curve. Definition means of what? Definition for what? Definition for the Iso-Quant curve, students. See, the definition of the iso product curve is given by the Professor Ken Starr, student. Professor Ken Starr says the output curve, or we can say the iso product curve, describe all possible combinations of two factors that give the same total output, that give the same proportion of the output. Students, in this definition, Professor Ken Starr says the iso product curve says explain those possibilities while the using of two factors, one capital and the one other labor, while using these two factors of the production in various proportions, and the entrepreneur are be able to get the equiproduction. Now, the second definition of the iso product curve is given by the Professor Cohen. Professor Cohen says an iso product curve is a curve on which the maximum rate of the output returns of the output is constant. It means Professor Cohen want to say the iso product curve are those showing those combinations of maximum output of the productions while using the various combination of the capital and the labor. So in notes, students, while studying these two definitions, we must say that it is clear from the above definition that the indifference curve is formed by joining many points or with many combinations of the coincidence of two factors of productions giving equal output or equal proportion of the production. But keeping in mind that an iso product curve represents only one level of the productions. In other words, the iso product curve is the focus of several points of allocations of two factors of productions producing the same output or same amount of the output. Students, different iso product lines present different level of the output of the productions, and we can say the upper indifference product are showing the upper production or more production than the lower production curve. Now see the assumptions of the iso product curve. Students, as earlier in our all lectures, we have to focus on the assumptions point. What the means of assumptions? It means assumptions shows those possibilities, those surrounding of the form of the law by whom the law will implement. It means we are studying the microeconomics, and microeconomics is economics which are defining the concept in a specific boundary where other factor will be constant. So if the other factor will be constant, it means this law is not a unanimous law. This law have a specific area, and assumptions are be determining, assumptions are be declaring that boundary of the application of the law. So Iso-Quant curve also we have assumptions because this is the part of microeconomics. So see the assumptions of the Iso-Quant curve. Student, there are four assumptions. These four assumptions are just similar to the iso indifference curve assumptions, but little bit changed because on the indifference curve we are focusing on the consumers, but in this law we are focusing on the producer. So just see the first assumption, that is this explanation is made with the reference of only two resources of the productions, labor and capital. As earlier we have to say that although there are 5 factors of the production, but as a point of the law and the point of the graphical presentation of Iso-Quant curve, and a graphical presentation have only 2 axes, that's why we have to consider only 2 factors, and that is the capital and the labor. In the case of the 3 instrument or three factors, this analysis becomes very complex, so that this law are considering only 2 factors, not more than 2 and not less than 2. Second, students, the second assumption is there is no change in the technology of the production, because if the production technology will be changed, then the production's output also we have to change. The combination of the factors are not to be considered as a change of the technology, because it is the assumptions. So in these assumptions, the scholars have to say that there are no change on the technology, and the entrepreneur have to use the maximum best suitable technology on the production processes. The third one is the quantity of the factor of the productions can be divided into small quantities. It is because of this assumption that we are able to draw plain ISO product line strength. As we know that the capital have to require a huge amount of the expenses, but as per the theory of as per the assumptions of the Iso-Quant curve, the productions factors like capital and labor are be divided into divided into several small pieces, by whom the substitution of the one factor to another factor will be easily be possible. So because if the factor are not to be divided, then the rate of substitution will not be possible. So in this case it is the assumption of the theory that all the production factors like capitals and the labor, it have to divide it into small pieces, by whom the rate of the substitution will be considered. Now the fourth one is the means of the productions can be substituted for each other, and they can be mixed with the maximum possible efficiency under the given technological condition of the production. The scholar have to assume that the capital are be substituted with the labor, and the labor are be substituted with the capital. And while the changing of the substitution of the labor to capital and capital to labor, there are no change, there are no technological change effect the production processes. So the change of the capital to labor and labor to capital is be accepted. Students, the fifth one assumption is not to be mentioned on the screen, but you have to consider it and you have to notate it. The fifth one assumption is at least one factor must be used for the used while the production process. This is not to be possible without utilizing both factors, because only by the capital the production is not to be possible, only by the labor the production is not to be possible. Because if the entrepreneur have to use only the capital resources, it means it is only be in capital based work, capital based production, and it is not to be possibly or not to be said that it is not to be able to do the productions without the engagement of the labor, without the engagement of the both factors. So it is also the assumptions of the Iso-Quant curve, or we can say it is also the assumptions of the iso production curve, that the entrepreneur must be used the both factor, at least one unit of the each factor. So these are the assumptions as well. Now the presentation of the Iso-Quant curve, we know the definition of the iso product curve, we know the assumptions of the iso product curve. So now after studying all these two things, we now get to start. We now to draw a Iso-Quant curve by using the assumptions and the theories. So on the screen you are watching that there are a table are being given. The combination means the ratio of the capital and the labor, the various combination of the capital and the labor. And now on the fourth column, you must be watch that there are the productions will be shown. There are the production will be expressed. See, in the production on the first combination where A combination are we use 2 amounts of the labor and 2 amount of the capital and 15 amount of the labor. While using the 2 amount of the capital and 15 amount of the labor, we must get the productions 200. So this is the first combination. It means 2 capital and 15 labor. While using these combinations, we get the 200 productions. If this combination will not to be attainable, if this combination will not to be possible to find by the possible to attain by the entrepreneur, so on these circumstances, what the next combination? Next combination is B, where the entrepreneur have to use 4 amount of the capital and 11 amount of the labor. So see here, while increasing the amount of the capital, it is decreasing the amount of the labor, because the rate of substitution, while using 2 more capital, they must be have to decrease 3 amount of or 4 amount of the labor. It means the substitution rate of the capital and labor are be here, shown here. While changing 8 students, the entrepreneur have to get the output on the same proportion as the A combination will provide. It means they also be able to get the production of 200 unit. Now third is C combination. On the C combination, students, the further the entrepreneur have to increase to another amount of the capital and substituting the capital with the labor, and now the amount of the labor will be fall, and it is now 8 on the place of the 11, and the capital is 6 on the place of the 4 capital. While using these combinations, the entrepreneur are be able to get the same production. It's 200. That's what it is called, the iso product curve. The fourth combination is on D combination, where the entrepreneur further to increase the capital by 8, replacing to 6 factor of the capital, and to decrease the amount of the labor 6, while changing the 8 from the 8 amount of the labors, and further it is providing the 200 amount of the production. So it is the fourth combinations which were shown by the D combinations. Now the fifth one is E, where the entrepreneur further to change the factor, or we can say to increase the amount of the capital from 8 unit to 10 units, and further to decrease the amount of the labor from 6 unit to 5 unit, and now it is get the 200 productions. It means in all observation, students, the entrepreneur are be able to get the productions amount 200 rupees, 200 amount of the production, but the combination of the capital and labor are be substituted to each other. Sometimes the capital is more than the labor, and at the last time the labor is on the beginning the capital is less than the labor, and at the last the capital is more than the labor. And there are so many combinations, and now see what the combinations are there. So it is be seen by the given observation. The A combination shows 2 amount of the x is referred to the capital and y is referred to the labor. So first combination is A, where the entrepreneur have to use 2 amount of the capital and 15 amount of the labor, that is shown by the x and y. Further, the combination B, where the entrepreneur have to use 4 amount of the x, it means 4 amount of the capital and 11 amount of the labor, that is y. And the combination C, the entrepreneur have to use the 6 amount of the capital, that is represented by the x, and 8 amount of the labor, that is represented by the y. And on the combination D, the entrepreneur have to use the 8 amount of the x, it means it's the capital, and 6 amount of the y, it is the labor. And E combination, that is the last combination shown on the table, and that is 10 amount of the x and y amount of 5 amount of the y, and that is x, it means it is the capital, and y it is the labor. So all combination give the productions of same output and equal to the 200 unit. So while observing these all, we can say this explanation will be shown that having the various combinations, having the change of the combinations, while A, B, C, D, E, the entrepreneur are be able to get the same proportion of the output, same amount of the output. So this will be shown by the ISO product curve. That is what it is called, the ISO product curve or Iso-Quant curve. Iso-Quant means ISO quantity curve. Now, to see these all things by the diagram, students, now you are seeing the diagram on the screen where X, Y axis shows the white goods, that is the capital, that is the labor, and OX is the X good, that is the capital. And now all the combination was shown on the screen where the 15 amount of the labor and 2 amount of the capital is the combination A. The entrepreneur are able to get the production 200 units. Same, the 11 amount of the capital of the labors and 4 amount of the capital is the combination B, and C is the 8 amount of the labor and 6 amount of the capital, that is the combination C. 6 amount of the labor and 8 amount of the capital, that is the combination D. And further, the last is 5 amount of the labor and 10 amount of the capital, that is the combination E. In all combination, the entrepreneur must be used at least 1 unit of the each factor. And to transferring the A to B, B to C, C to D, and D to E is the rate of substitution of capital to labor. But entrepreneur are able to get the output in equal proportion, equal amount is 200 rupees, 200 output. So this is the basic theory behind the IP curve, ISO product curve, restaurant. Sometimes it is also be shown by the IQ curve, Iso-Quant curve, restaurant. Now see the ISO product map. All of you know that map is referring the set of so many curves, curves, restaurant. And now in the same diagram, restaurant, we are seeing the IP1, IP2, IP3, IP4, IP5. It means IP1 shows the 100 production, IP2 shows the 200 production, IP3 shows the 300 production, IP4 shows the 400 production, and IP5 shows the 500 production. So what the means of the ISO product curve, ISO map? ISO product map shows the various set of the output, or we can say the various set of the IP curve, where the very different level of the production will be shown, and each and every IP curve must we have to attain a larger amount of the output while using the larger amount of the resources. See here, if we are describing the, see just to this line is true. If we use this amount of the X resources and this amount of the Y resources, we get the 100 output. But while we are shifting on IP2, our X and Y resources are being increased. If the X and Y resources are being increased, then it means it is automatically our output is also being increased. Now see on the 4th IP, see on the 3rd IP, see on the 5th IP, wherever we have to go, student. Our output are being increasing because our resources are being increased. So this is the ISO product map. It means while increasing the both factor, if not substitution are there, then our output are be in increasing order. It will shown by it will expressed by the in ISO product map, student. So now I think it will be described in this order, in this word. Thus, when multiple output lines showing different equal quantities of the output for the same producing firms as are shown in the same diagram, the intended diagram is called an ISO product map. The higher output curves of the ISO product map indicate the higher level of the output of the firms, and the lower ISO product curve represented the lower level of the output. It will be explained by the this analysis, students. Now say, student, the substitution elasticity of the factor. How can the capital will be substituted with the labor? It will be explained now. Now see, the measure of each of substitutions between two resources of production is measured by the replacement analysis, or we can say replacement elasticity of the factor. Replacement, it means when we have to change one factor with the other factor. So this is called the replacement of factor, elasticity of the factor. It, in other words, the elasticity of the substitution of a factor measure the degree of the substitution elasticity between the factor within which a factor of the productions can be replaced by a factor of another. In the word of Professor Higgs, the elasticity of the substitution of all instrument or factor is the measure of the condition in which a variable factor can be substituted for the other sources of origin. Student, the substitution elasticity of the factor can be explained with the help of the two factors of productions, capital and labor. Capital represented by the K and labor is represented by the L. The basis of the substitution elasticity of the factor in the marginal rate of the technological substitution, MRTS on labor and capital. Now see, the formula is on the screen. MRTS LK, it means labor substitution of the capital. Delta K represented the change in the amount of the capital, and delta L is shows the change in the amount of the labor, students. Now see, if we want to change it in English manner, now see here, change in the amount of the capital and change in the amount of the labor, students. Now see the students, the things in a descriptive manner. The substitution elasticity of a factor can be defined with the help of the marginal rate of the substitution. Student, the relative change in the ratio between the factor is response to a change in the technical marginal substitution. It is called the substitution elasticity of the factor, and now it will be shown by the equation. Student, elasticity of substitution is equal to delta change in the capital upon labor and the previous amount of the older amount of the capital and labor upon the change on the MRTS of LK and divisible by the MRTS of the LK. Now easy 5 of this equation is done. Elasticity of substitution is equal to delta KL capital and labor upon KL. The similar the easification of this equation is done, and further the easification of this, the delta MRTS of LK and upon to MRTS of the LK, and further it will be easified by the elasticity of substitution is equal to delta KL upon KL into the interchange of this thing, MRTS LK upon delta MRTS LK. So this is the substitution. This is the formula for getting the substitution. Students, if we are studying in mathematical economics, so on there we have to select, or we have to take a illustration by the numerical way, but this is the advanced economics classes, this is the applied economics classes. So in this classes we just only to consider only the formula of this substitution. Students, it was defined in this word. In two factor of the substitution, labor and the capital are used in fixed proportion in the productions of a particular commodities, then the substitution elasticity of the factor will be 0. Further, students, if the production is completely substitution, that is one resources can be easily replaced by another, then the substitution elasticity of the factor will be infinite. The substitution elasticity of a factors can be measured by the curvature of the output curves. If the factor is perfectly complementary, then the output curves will be L-shaped, and in such a cases, the substitution elasticity of the factor will be 0. Conversely, students, in the case of the complete replacement of the resources, the curvature of the output curves will cease and the output curve will come as a straight line falling down from left to right. In such a case, the substitution elasticity of the factors will be infinite, but in reality, the means of the productions are neither found to be a complete complementary nor a complete substitute. The substitution capacity of the instrument of the factor is determined by the flatter of the uh, isoquant curve. So the more flat the isoquant curve, the greater will be the substitution elasticity. In such a situation, the means of the production will be called good substitution, and this is the details of isoproduct curve. Students, one another concept I'll be remaining here, that is the ridge line, and I will provide a individual lecture, individual video on the isoquant curve, on the ridge line. Student, I think this lecture benefited you for the study of isoquant curve and isoproduct curve. It is the individual parts of microeconomic history, student, and it is helpful for your important for your economics preparation, student. Economic classes preparation, or be examination for examination for economic syllabus, student. So I think you are enjoying this video, you are enjoying this content. If you have any query, you must be have to put your questions in the comment box, and I will try to answer your questions. Thank you, students. Thanks a lot.